everyone who's attending the conference, the webinar today. Like Geeta mentioned, we've got a very exciting webinar series set up for you. It's actually a 4-part series, and today we're just going to talk about behavioral analytics. This is not a theoretical exercise. This is an actual case study. This is based on an actual case study for a significant engagement that OSG led and delivered for a global insurance company. So I want to kind of put out the lay of the land here today. The topics that we're going to be covering will be around behavioral analytics. Then we're going to talk about the basics of our approach. We're going to talk about segmentation. And then we're going to end with how behavioral analytics can help life and retirement firms generate growth. So what is behavioral analytics?
Shupriya, I think that's a great question, because I think those of us in the life insurance industry have been exposed to a lot of pitches from a lot of very, very credible firms about behavioral economics. And, you know, I am here participating with you today largely because I'm a fan of the comprehensive approach that you folks use that, you know, not only gets at the big data, small data kind of risk classification picture, but also gets at consumer engagement.
Absolutely, thank you.
Yeah.
That is the focus of our discussion today. You know, what is behavioral analytics and how do we get to the heart of it? So behavioral analytics really, the way we approach behavioral analytics compared to some other firms that may be focused on the same, is we really try to understand how customers make choice. And their choice really gets to the heart of decision making. So it is the how and the why behind customers' thought process, and our approach to uncovering that is what we classify as behavioral analytics. Our goal really is on 3 key things. We try to understand how customers make trade-offs, because at any point in time, whether a customer is buying a bar of soap or something as complex as a life insurance or a retirement product, there are various different options that the customer is always considering. So we start off by understanding what those options are based on some of the needs that the customer may have, and then how the customer makes trade-offs in their mind. And when we learn about how and why they make their decision, that is what helps us pinpoint the most effective way to engage the customer. The behaviors we try to understand are multifaceted and vary based on what we are trying to uncover. But generally speaking, it really starts off with the needs. What are the met and the unmet needs of the customer? What might motivate them? What is their level of commitment? How urgent is their need? What are the costs and benefits that they're trade-offing in their, making trade-offs in their mind? If there are programs which deal with a lot of engagement, and there are goals, then what motivates, customers to achieve those goals, and what reward preferences they may have? And finally, regardless of the program that we are trying to put in place, there is always a communications approach. What kind of communication channels do customers prefer? What kind of messaging resonates with those customers? So when we learn all of these, the how and the why behind the decisions, then it really sets the stage for shaping the future of the business across the entire marketing mix. So Frank, that's how we do it.
When I get dressed in the morning, there are lots of factors that go into my choice of bow tie, socks, shirt, suit, whatever, none of which have anything to do with my age, kind of life stage, my health profile, all those things that are the focus of a whole lot of analytics these days. How does OSG get at those kind of indeterminate drivers?
Okay, that's a very, very good question, and that really helps me get into the next part of our presentation here. Let me spend a few minutes now then talking about the approach. How do we understand whether in the morning a person like Frank would choose to wear a red sock versus a green sock, or a bow tie versus a tie? And in the context of life insurance, if it's a product how does the customer choose to buy one particular kind of product versus the other? If it's a service option, then what are the factors that matter the most to the customer versus others that are not as important? So the starting point is really where we kick it off. So let me start off by telling you a little bit about our approach. We use a methodology that is peer tested and published in academia. The process that we use is a methodology that we call internally ACEMAP. It's a process that has been used by OSG very successfully in over 700 plus engagements. This is something that was created and put in place and published by one of our founding research directors and has its root in Stanford University. And once again, the proof's always in the pudding, and that's where we are very, very proud to say that we have generated significant amount of value and growth for many clients over nearly a decade in 700 plus engagements. So now I want to get back to Frank's question, how do we really do it? The starting point is truly understanding a set of criteria, a set of needs, if you will, that the customer may be playing in their mind. Here's a specific illustrative example, and this illustrative example was around a health and wellness program that an insurer was trying to put in place to help their members get healthier, and on the back end, through the achievement of greater health and wellness for their customers, the insurer wanted to basically reduce their claims risk and increase profitability. So the starting point for us really was to figure out what are some of the key drivers, what are some of the key motivators for the enrollment into such a program. There are 9 attributes that are listed here, and the way we got to these 9 attributes was to basically conduct a detailed dialogue with the end customer. We did this through focus groups, and through the focus groups, we identified 9 items that, broadly speaking, across the entire customer population, a random sample of the customer population that we tried this with, cared about. This is specific to this particular program, but generally speaking, when we start off, whether it's product development, whether it's marketing communications, whether it's segmentation, whether it's acquisition, customer acquisition, that is the first step, Frank, where we go out and we look at what are some of the laundry list of needs or attributes that would be important. While there are 9 items listed here, through our process, we are able to test dozens of attributes. So it doesn't have to be limited to just 9 or 10. In certain cases, we have actually looked at thousands of attributes that we have tested across multiple different types of programs that we've tried to create. So that's really the starting point, is the identification of key factors, key needs or motivators that the customer cares about.
How do you get a ranking or a list of 9 from thousands?
So the 1,000 that comes about is something that would come about through conversation with the clients, and then the next point is basically obviously to narrow it down to the most relative attributes that are there. So the process goes through 4 steps, where we put out those attributes and then we ask the customers to review and sort the ones that are most important. And then we ask the customers to rank those attributes in order of importance. And it doesn't really stop there. So there may be a dozen, there may be 500, there may be 50. Then once we go through the process, we ask customers to rank and sort them. And then once the ranking and sorting is done and we come up with the top sort of criteria, then what we do is we ask the customers through a gamification process, pairwise, to list how important one is versus the other. So if you look at the previous slide where we had diversity of programs, right, and rewards of programs, and there are 9 other attributes, we may ask the customer to basically play a game where we say, attribute 1 versus 2, 2 versus 4, 4 versus 6. Which one is more important to you? And when the process is completed, what we end up with is not only a list of priorities, but the relative importance of one versus the other. And the other natural outcome of this is, while not everything is going to be important to everybody, certain things are going to percolate to the top, and through this entire process, we're able to understand what the various segments are, how they prioritize, and the relative ranking and the importance of each of these attributes to the different segments.
You know, Supriyo, I think it's really important to make the point that you actually are force ranking or doing, you know, kind of the binary testing that you do. I can't help but think of an eye exam. I'm a lifetime glasses wearer, and every so often I have to get an eye exam, and the way that that goes, if you have ever had that done, is that the optometrist will say, well, which looks better, this one or that one, or this one or that, and based on your response, there's another choice that's offered to kind of force a force ranking. I think it's really, really a powerful approach.
That's absolutely right. And so when you force rank it, I mean, ask a distribution partner or ask a customer. They may end up with a laundry list of things that are important to them, but in their mind they may not be able to articulate which one is more important versus the other. So through this process of forced ranking, we are able to figure out exactly what is important and by how much, right? And the relative strength of one versus the other. So for instance, if you're going through an underwriting process and we are trying to go through a simplified issue or guaranteed issue sort of scripting, and there are multiple questions to be tested, then here it allows propensity for, by doing this binary test, you would be able to figure out what is the likelihood that certain customers are more willing to answer one versus the other, and the efficacy of that question. So you're able to understand that, and you would not only understand that in the context of customers in general, but you would also be able to understand that by the various segments that are out there. So the other important thing, and I'll come back to the example that we put out here, which was we were trying to engage customers in a health and wellness program. So once we went through this entire process of understanding what their needs are, what their priorities are, how likely they are to respond, and what is more important to them versus the other, we were able to figure out through our statistical methodology here, underpinning behavioral analytics, what is the likelihood a customer is going to engage with you. So you can apply the same methodology here to the top of the funnel, sales funnel for acquisition. You can apply the same thing to underwriting, for instance, where a lot of people may raise their hand and basically say, hey, I'm interested in purchasing a product. They may even sign up, to get their labs done, but on the day of the labs, they would never show up. Right? So there is a significant amount of leakage, but through this process, we would be able to statistically measure and figure out what are the drivers, what are the key factors, and how likely are they to engage based on the process that we have laid out. In this case, we found out that without behavioral science, the likelihood of customers to engage was less than 10%, but after our statistical analysis and approach was implemented, it jumped to 40%, which is significant. So we've talked quite a bit about engagement in our approach and segmentation. So next, what I want to do is I want to pivot and talk about segmentation.
And I think this is what's really different about the OSG approach. I mean, we have lots of vendors, lots of consultancies, lots of very, very famous firms putting forth risk selection models that depend on existing data, big data, primary research in some cases, but this seems to be an approach that brings it all together, and to my heart and passion, actually focuses on customer engagement. I think a 40% take-up rate versus less than 10 is huge, and anyone who's actually managed a life and retirement business knows that the take-up and efficiency of the process is just as important as the accuracy of the risk selection.
And Frank, you're right. So coming back to segmentation, if you look at some common approaches that are there, a starting point and an easy point, because the data oftentimes is available, is demographics, right? So we know the age, we know the gender, we probably know income levels and geography and a few other things. And based on that, a good starting point for for segmentation is oftentimes demographics. It's good for targeting, but what it does not allow you to do is it does not allow you to optimize your offerings, because you don't really come out with a very strong understanding of what the customers value. Right? I mean, there's no differentiation in that understanding. Some of that can be overcome with attitudinal segmentation. This is good for communications purposes, but once again, I mean, it does not provide you a good enough understanding of, what kind of offer would resonate with the customers. And so we bridge the gap here through our approach, when you start to understand how and why customers make decisions and the trade-offs, most importantly, that they make, what will they value and what are they willing to forego and for what price, then that really sets this segmentation methodology apart, because it gives you then a powerful guidance for how you should develop your offer and what platform and what strategy you should pursue to kind of engage the customer. So that is the heart of what we do, and the starting point often for behavioral analytics is customer segmentation, because you understand what is different about various different groups and what they really care about.
I think that's a huge differentiator to this approach. Sometimes it doesn't make just strict logical sense, the choices people make, although if you can actually understand their emotional investment, their kind of self-image investment, and those things, then you can understand why they make the choices they do. And that's a very, very powerful tool and insight to have.
That's right, Frank. And one other thing that I'm going to talk about now is, and you mentioned this, right? You mentioned big data, little data. So different companies are in different stages of evolution with their data and analytics strategy, right? So our mantra to our firms is, big data, little data, good data, bad data. We'll work with the data that you have. In the ideal world, what we recommend for life, and especially life and health insurers, is to leverage the rich secondary data, historical data that they have based on transactions around the customers. In this day and age, real-time access to electronic health records, pharmacy data and lab data is becoming more and more ubiquitous, and OSG has ways to access all of this real time. So we take all of this and then we combine this with primary research. So we combine secondary data analytics with primary data analytics. And oftentimes we use a lot of behavioral surrogates to understand behaviors, and for risk management, for underwriting, behavioral surrogates can often be a great way to understand certain gaps that you would probably never be able to get to through structured transactional data. So when you marry the two, then the powerful outcome that we are able to achieve is not only are we able to understand different customer segments, the risk profile of those different cohorts, but we also understand how to manage and mitigate risks while improving customer engagement at the same time. Being able to combine the two is powerful, because there is a segment of customers that you want to attract and you go after, and once you understand their lifetime value, you really want to be able to engage them. So marrying risk with customer engagement is a powerful differentiator, not only for creating offerings, but also to make sure that the funnel widens in the top and that the enrollment and the conversion ratios are really high. So with that, I really want to pivot to the next topic, which is around, what does this all really mean for life and retirement companies, and how can behavioral analytics really help?
I think that there's, rich vein of exploration here, and I am again coming back to the all-encompassing approach that OSG takes. And I think, the emphasis on primary research is important. But I've seen some of your work, Shupriyo, and I know that if one has 1 million customers, there's no real need to survey all 1 million customers, that you will uncover correlations between some of the data that's already available and the behavioral profile that can be used to segment and channel not only communication but approaches. And you also have a way to incorporate artificial intelligence into it as well.
Right, and thank you for that, Frank. I mean, we've got a 4-part exciting series that's coming up. In this particular piece today, we're going to focus on behavioral analytics. But just as a teaser, in the next step, we're going to talk about what kind of primary data we go after, what sample sizes we use, what kind of internal data, right, structured data do we bring into the fold, and how do we combine all of that, leveraging behavioral analytics, predictive modeling, and cognitive artificial intelligence to create the value that our client partners, strategic client partners, are looking for. So if you look at the entire insurance value chain up here for life and retirement firms, and generally speaking, but this is very specific to life and retirement, it really starts up with marketing. It's how do you attract, how do you generate leads? How do you attract the clients? How do you communicate with them? And then how do you basically place the product and get distribution partners or your direct channels or career channels to basically pique that interest and close an app. And obviously there's product in the mix. What products resonate with more customers, and at what benefit and at what price points are they willing to engage with you. And then obviously there is the big aspect of risk management and underwriting. And when it comes down to underwriting in this day and age of simplified issue, guaranteed issue underwriting, how do you ensure that your customers are accurately disclosing information to you? How do you simplify the process while at the same time reduce the risk? So there are some of these aspects that are top of mind for most insurers that are out there. So with all of that in the mix, there's quite a bit that we can uncover. I'm happy to field questions towards the end, but broadly speaking, I mean, the approach, the combination of various analytical models, but starting with behavioral analytics, really helps you understand and solve some of the problems that were listed in the prior page. And it goes back to the heart of understanding how and why customers make choice. And once you understand the trade-offs that they're making in their head, then that truly is a starting point for solving many of these problems.
And it's really kind of I think a holistic view is the view that delivers the most value to all parties, to companies and carriers, to distributors, to consumers. That if all of the chevrons on the prior page can be improved in terms of their efficiency and effectiveness, then everybody wins. And the one thing that you bring to the table at OSG is a model that really does get at consumer engagement much more robustly and on a much deeper level than anything I've seen.
And I think that's the heart of it. Oftentimes the starting point is tactical with sales and operations. How do we reduce leakage in the funnel? How do we reduce cycle time? How do we improve placement rates? Improve loyalty, and obviously we are all interested in the top of the pyramid here, which is basically generating creating more value, creating greater revenue. But unless you know how to engage your customers in the most meaningful way, then a lot of this remains suboptimal. So the starting point in our mind, and we tackle not just customer engagement, we tackle every aspect of what you see here in the pyramid to value creation. But once you're able to understand various customer segments, what really makes one group tick versus the other, through that entire insurance funnel that we put up in the prior slide, then that personalized level of engagement with customers, how and when they want it, is the key in our opinion, and in the years of decades of work that we have done with our client partners, is the key to competitive differentiation. So how does all of this how does all of this matter, and what are some of the opportunities for behavioral analytics for insurance companies? I think, like we've talked about, understanding the customer, and this is not something that can only be geared towards customers. For companies that are going to market through intermediaries, really understanding both the customer as well as the intermediary leads, and marrying the two, and leads to superior segmentation and methods by which to penetrate the market better. So we often recommend to our client partners that segmentation is the starting point, but then we can leverage the same principles and get to distribution quality, right? How do we improve distribution quality? How do we optimize our precious sales resources? On the right side, how do we understand customers and their behavioral profile and improve product pricing and underwriting? And then how do we take all of this insight and improve our policy owner marketing, our direct marketing campaigns, and improve experience, retention, and loyalty? At the same time, and this is very critical to profitability, is how do we understand where there's fraudulent behavior, where there's misrepresentation and lack of disclosure, and how do we fix all of that? Behavioral analytics is a great complement to traditional means of predictive modeling, and the combination of the two can provide powerful insights and programs that can bridge many of these gaps and create superior value for life and insurance partners. So that I believe, and we have seen through our experience to be the case. as I mentioned, there is a very specific case study based on work that we have done with the global insurance company, and I'm very excited to basically announce that in the next 2 to 3 weeks we're going to have part 2 of our webinar, where we're going to go deeper and start talking about behavioral analytics as a starting point, but then how do we begin to connect all of this with predictive modeling and risk modeling, understanding the customer lifetime value, and most importantly, how do we launch the right set of interventions to create value for the firm. So that's the next step in the process. I would like to stop at this point in time. We still have about 2 or 3 minutes to go, and see if there's any questions from the audience.
Thank you, Supriyo and Frank. We have a question relating to sales, and it's, how do you think, can you talk briefly about how the tool can be used to improve sales?
Absolutely. So at the top of the funnel, what we are able to do is we are able to improve lead generation. We are able to look at various segments of customers that are out there, their behaviors that are out there, and we're able to score customers to figure out whether it's a prospect that is new to a company or whether it's a customer internal in force already and you're trying to upsell and cross-sell. So through our analytics, we're able to understand the propensity of purchase, we're able to understand methods by which to communicate with them, and lastly, we are able to create tools that we can hand off to our distribution partners to basically close the deal with a lot more insights on what really, what really the objections are and how to overcome them. So the combination of analytics, the combination of tools, and a deep insight of the customers, the combination of this really helps with acquisition, and then we can go from there to expansion, which is basically upsell, cross-sell, and then finally, when you have the customers, you really want to get them to stay, and you want to get repeat business from them without losing them. So the entire approach that we have and the platform that we can implement goes through that entire funnel of acquisition, expansion, and retention management as well.
Thank you, Supriyo, for the answer.
I can say, let me add just one thing to that, if you will. I know that I've had discussions with one of the founders of probably the biggest direct-to-consumer company in the U.S. And his question has always been, I want to understand from my customers how they want to be quoted. What products they want quoted, how do they want to be approached, how do they want to be quoted, and I think the OSG approach really can get at that better than anything I've ever seen.
And Frank, that's a very pertinent point, because when you basically say, I would like to understand how my customers would like to be quoted, the implicit question is there. The implicit question is, not everyone likes to be quoted the same way. And,
right.
Different customers have different preferences. The selling tactic that you may employ with segment 1 may be very different to segment 2. So the customers are basically very quickly making a set of decisions in their mind. Is this resonating with me or not? Do I have other options? And how do I choose? So if you have a great understanding in depth of how customers are making those decisions, and you can pivot and create programs, not just blanket, how to address, customers generally speaking, but with a deep understanding of the segments, then you have a winning value proposition.
Thank you, Supriyo and Frank. We don't have any more questions. So for the audience, anybody who would like to contact either Supriyo or Frank, we have the information up on the screen. And we again thank you for attending this presentation and wish you all a very good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.